I came to Uruguay for the first time when I was 17 still. When I would tell people I was going there, they had no idea where it was. Like, my family had never even heard of it before. Like, it never seemed crazy in my head, even though realistically I was like the only person I knew that would leave the US. The majority of the people I grew up around had never left.
I mean, how did your family react to that? Were they like shocked that you were going to go on that trip?
When I told my grandparents I was coming here, they told me that I was going to be kidnapped, that I was going to
Right.
stand out because of the way that I looked, and that I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. I had a lot of these like preconceived notions about how it was going to be before I got here.
It's like vulnerable to speak another language. And so it feels like if you mess up, it's not just a mistake, it's like something personal.
It's like a knife to the heart when you think you're speaking so eloquently, so fluently, and then they just correct you.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, of course, no problem. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think your videos are like super underrated. I really like them. They're cool. They're so well done. You can tell that you put a lot of work into them. The editing is really good. Very cinematic, I feel like.
Oh, thank you. Very kind of you.
So let's take it back to the beginning and kind of like your origin story. Where are you from originally? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm from Oregon. I'm from the capital city, so Salem. The other Salem, not the witch one. When I tell people I'm from Salem, they always think it's that one, but it's the other one. A little less boring, or a little more boring, but yeah,
The
so I'm from
non-witchy Salem.
exactly. Yes, yes. The not haunted
Hmm.
one. But yeah, I'm from Salem, Oregon, and I was born and raised there. I lived a couple years in Sacramento with my family because that's where my parents are from. But besides that, I lived in Oregon my whole life.
So your parents are from California and then they moved to Oregon before you were born.
Exactly, yeah.
Are there some similarities between Oregon and California? I mean, it's like West Coast vibes, or are they pretty different?
Well, my parents are from a town just outside Sacramento, so it's a little more rural. There's lots of orchards. They grow a lot of olives there. There's a lot of chickens that like roam their town.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that
Uh-huh.
sense, it's very different. Oregon's a lot more green as well. There's a lot of trees everywhere. It's very like Twilight-esque.
Right. I mean, they actually like Twilight is set in Oregon, right? Is that the
It's
deal?
it's set in Washington, but the majority of the movie was filmed in Oregon.
Ah, okay. Though I know that they did film some scenes here in Vancouver as well, like
They
on
did.
the university campus. There's a few spots I've seen like TikToks comparing the scene in the movie and then the actual spot here. And so I feel like Vancouver and Oregon probably like British Columbia, I guess, and Oregon share a lot of stuff too. You know, the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I've seen, I haven't been to Vancouver, but I've seen pictures and the landscape anyway, looks the exact same.
So then, like growing up in Oregon, did you guys do any like international trips?
We didn't. So I am actually the only person in my whole family to ever leave the US.
Really?
Yeah. Like nobody in my family's even ever left the West Coast.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very different in
Uh-huh.
that sense. None of my family's ever left the West
Hmm.
Coast.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So then, like, how did you come up with the idea to go so far away from home?
Yeah. So it's, it's kind of a long story, but I'll condense it as much as I can. So I graduated high school a year early. I graduated my junior year, so just like 2 weeks after I turned 17. So I was 16 my entire last year of high school. And yeah, and my aunt, I have an aunt who has some money. She's like the only person in my family with money. And so she wanted to get me something special because I achieved something before everybody else. And so she got me a trip to Hawaii to go see one of my friends who's Hawaiian that ended up moving back home the year before. And it would be my first time on a plane and my first time out of the West Coast. At that point, I had only been to Washington and Oregon and California. So, and I did it alone. I graduated in June. I flew 2 weeks later to Hawaii by myself, and I stayed with my friend for 2 weeks. And while I was in Hawaii, I actually met a guy from here, from Uruguay. He was on a 3 day layover in Hawaii before going to Japan with his family. And we kept talking, and he ended up coming to visit me in December of that year. And we started going out that year. And then I came to Uruguay for the first time later that year. And so that's my first time in Uruguay was because of him.
You had a strong motivation all of a sudden to go there.
Exactly. I feel like that's how a lot of international travel and language learning happens for love, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no stronger motivator than that. And
Of
I guess,
course,
like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe this is not accurate, but it feels like if you haven't been on an international trip, Uruguay is also kind of a random place to go. Like, if you didn't have a connection to it.
It was so random, and it was my first time out of the US ever. And when I would tell people I was going there, they had no idea where it was. Like my family had never even heard of it before. And
Right.
because I was so young that year, I hadn't even turned 18. I came to Uruguay for the first time when I was 17 still. It's
Wow.
crazy my family allowed me to do that, but yeah, I flew here by myself and it was a 23-hour journey.
Whoa, because Uruguay is like way at the southern point of South America, right?
Yeah,
At the
it's the
bottom.
second most southern capital city in the world.
Wow. So like, I mean, how did your family react to that? Were they like shocked that you were going to go on that trip?
Yeah, I think if they hadn't have met him before, they would not have been supportive, but because I was already in college and I was working and living on my own pretty much, they trusted me to make my own decisions. But it's pretty crazy. Now thinking back on it so many years later, it sounds crazy, but yeah, my family had no idea. They'd never heard of Uruguay. They had no idea where it was. And of course, being from the US, and I'm sure you can relate being from Canada, we hear a lot about Latin America and South America specifically about how dangerous it is. You know, when I told my grandparents I was coming here, they told me that I was going to be kidnapped, that I was going to
Right.
stand out because of the way that I looked, and that I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. And so I had a lot of these like preconceived notions about how it was going to be before I got here. And you've seen some of my videos, so you've probably seen, but when I got here, it kind of like blew my mind a little bit because it was so different to how I thought it would be, and so different to how Latin America is oftentimes um, shown in movies and TV in the US and anyway.
I mean, that's what keeps people from going to other countries as well, right?
Of
It's really
course,
easy
yeah.
to kind of live in a bubble, especially in North America, I feel like. You can just kind of live in a little bubble and be afraid to go outside of it, right? Why would I go anywhere else if it's going to be more dangerous than where I live, is kind of the preconceived notions that we have, right?
Of course,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, it makes sense that people would think that, especially if they're people that haven't left the US. Yeah, but that's a crazy trip to go on. And I feel like that's a great way to start kind of an adventurous lifestyle. You jump right into the deep end. When you were in it, did it feel like you were doing something crazy, or were you like, oh, this totally makes sense because like this guy that I know is over there, and like we're going out now, so it totally makes sense we'd be in the same country, or
Yeah, so I mean, thinking back on it, like I was had the most confidence in the world. Like I wasn't even phased by it. I bought that ticket. I got on the first flight, second one, third one, and like it never seemed crazy in my head, even though realistically I was like the only person I knew that would leave the US. The majority of the people I grew up around had never left, besides maybe a resort in Mexico.
and I think it's kind of like it's it seems crazy, but then in my own mind, it also makes total sense that if you're from an environment that's like a little bit smaller, maybe the less international experiences, it makes sense that you'd want to kind of like branch out and see something else as well. I kind of have a theory that it goes one of two ways. Either you get really comfortable in that environment and you never get a passport, or you're like, no, 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 I need to experience something different, and then you just kind of like jump, straight into it. I had
Of
kind of a
course, yeah.
similar experience in high school. Like I also graduated when I was 17 because I was born in December, and so when I graduated, I was like, oh, I want to go on an international trip, and I had Australia in mind, which is like it's not really the deep end for an English speaker, like it's still in the Commonwealth with Canada and there's no
But it's
language
very far
barrier.
though, so we have that in common. It's very far.
Very, yeah, yeah, really far flight. Yeah, completely different hemisphere. And so I did that, and I had to wait until I turned 18 to be able to get the visa because I was doing a working holiday visa.
Oh wow.
Um, and I was in the same kind of boat where no one in my life would do that. Like none of my friends, like I didn't necessarily want to travel by myself, but I didn't know anyone that would go with me. And so I just went on my own, and I really thought that I knew more than I did. Like I got to Australia, I didn't know what a hostel was. I was there for 6 months on my own, and I learned what a hostel was when I got there. And
Uh,
so I'm surprised I didn't like die, honestly. But sometimes you need that kind of blind confidence to push you through the things, right? Otherwise,
I
you
think
wouldn't
that's
do
really
it.
what it is. Yeah, just blind confidence at a young age. And then you grow up and you realize I can't do this.
Yeah, sure. You kind of trick yourself into thinking that it's easier than it is, I guess. Because traveling is hard, right? There's lots of challenges. Was it hard for you when you got to Uruguay? Was there some culture shock there?
So the first time I came here, I was only for about 3 weeks, and I had been hearing so much about it, obviously, from him, and he was telling me like, be prepared. This is the third world. It won't be like what you're used to. And in my head, I was like, no, it'll be fine. And I got here, and surprisingly, because I had such like negative connotations in my head when I got here, it was like mind blowing. Like everything was just so nice to me because like imagine me, I'm from this small town in Oregon. I had never really been anywhere and I come here and it's like a city of over a million people, like 1.5 million. There's like beautiful 100-year-old, 200-year-old buildings. Like I'd never seen a building that old before in my whole life. So when I got here, I saw everything with like a rose colored glasses, of course. But when I came here to live for the first time, that was when I experienced most of those culture shocks, where I was here for like a month and I ran out of like the hot sauce that I brought. I brought like a bottle of sriracha and I ran out of it and I tried to find it and I couldn't find it anywhere. Like I looked for like a week. I found it at one store and it was something crazy like $16. And I was like, oh, wow. So I had like a bunch of culture shocks where I like couldn't get the food that I wanted and I couldn't do a lot of the things that I was like comfortable with. But yeah, of course, those experiences really helped me grow a lot because I realized I didn't need all of the things that I thought that I needed to live a good life. And I didn't need like those foods. It really just opened me up in a way that nothing else really had at that point. And at that point, when I came to live here, I think I was 19, and I thought that I was like cultured and I thought I was like well educated, but after being here for a long time, it really like opened me up in a way that I didn't realize I needed to be opened up, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
totally, yeah. Yeah, you don't see the culture that you live in, right? You don't see the culture that you're from until you step outside of it. And I think it's totally normal to like want to cling to things that you're familiar with when you're in a different environment. You know, like the hot sauce, like the food,
Yeah.
you know, the cultural norms, whatever it might be. Because it's like a vulnerable thing to be in a different country where everyone is doing things differently than you're used to, right?
Of
So
course,
like how
yeah.
long were you there for this was that the second trip that you went on when you actually officially moved there?
Yeah, so I've been coming and going for a long time. So in 2020 we came here for the pandemic. So I spent the majority of the pandemic here. I spent like seven, not the majority. I spent the majority of like lockdown here. So I was here for like 7 months, and yeah, that was the longest stint I had been out of the country ever, obviously.
How many trips have you been on in total then? Back and forth.
Uh, to here, ooh, I
Yeah.
came in 2019, came in 2020, 2021, 2023, and then just now, like this trip now would be the fifth.
So pretty much every year for like 5 years.
Yeah, I skipped 2024 because I went to Europe, but now I'm officially here for like a year and a half. I bought a one-way ticket, so
Like you're planning on staying a year and a half, or you've been there a year and a half already?
I'm planning on staying here a year and a half minimum. I really enjoy it here, so I might be here longer.
That's cool. You could see yourself living there.
I could, yeah, long term, yeah.
Now you've also been to other countries in Latin America. I've seen videos that you've done in like Argentina and Brazil and Mexico, even for like other Latin American countries. How does Uruguay compare to other places you've been?
Ooh, so with Argentina, the culture is like pretty similar. I would say Uruguay, in Argentina, the energy is very high. Like in Buenos Aires, the energy is very high. The first time I went there, I arrived the day of the semifinals of the World Cup. I arrived
Ooh.
that night and it was crazy. Like I took what's called the Buquebus. It's like a ferry that goes between Montevideo and Buenos Aires. It's like a 2 hour, like a big ferry ride. Think of like the ferry that goes between France and the UK. It's like a big boat like that. So when I arrived, the minute I arrived is when the game started and everything stopped. They closed the customs line and we all sat on the floor and they rolled in like three TVs and we just watched the game in the customs line. Like the customs agents came out, they like closed off the customs line and we just sat there for like 3 hours watching the game.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a religion in Latin America,
Yeah,
the
it was crazy.
soccer.
Yeah. And so the energy there is crazy high. They're very passionate about like everything it seems when they talk. They like do this and they scream. And so Uruguay is like a little bit more docile maybe, like they're a little bit calmer here. There's like a real sense of like tranqui here. Like that's what like the motto is basically, like tranqui, the unofficial motto. And so life is pretty like slow paced here.
So it's like not as passionate, but they do share some other cultural norms with Argentina.
Yes, yeah. So they have the same dialect and they have a lot of the same like cultural foods. Like they both have the asado, they have alfajores, they have dulce de leche. And it's kind of funny. There's like a little rivalry between Uruguay and Argentina, like who invented what. So there's like a rivalry of who invented the tango, who invented dulce de leche, who invented alfajores. And it's disputed to this day, even.
Yeah, it's like the countries that are the most similar culturally also tend to be the countries that have the most conflicts for some reason.
Yeah,
Like
it's very
they just feel
interesting, isn't it?
comfortable like beefing with each other. They're like siblings basically arguing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same deal in Colombia and Venezuela, right? Very close neighboring countries, they
Hmm.
border, but they argue about stuff like who invented the arepa. That's their thing.
Right,
And so
right.
they just argue endlessly about that. Who was the first country to make an arepa? And yeah, I don't like to get involved because it's very passionate. But
Yes, yeah.
I feel like there's also like I don't know if this is fully accurate in other Latin American countries, but when I was in Colombia, I really got the vibe that there was also somewhat of a divide between Argentina and Colombia. And
Hmm.
what people said there is that like the Argentinians kind of like were a little bit uppity at times. Like they felt maybe a little bit superior to other Latin American countries and cultures. Do you think that is accurate?
I mean, even here, people say that. Like my mother-in-law says that a lot. Like Argent, she doesn't want to go to Buenos Aires because they're all uppity. Like they think they're better than everyone else, and that so that definitely is a stereotype that I think is true. I have a my mother-in-law, her sister lives in Buenos Aires, and she's lived there for like 35 years or something, and I think she's become a little like porteña herself. Like there's like conflict even within the family about it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as white people, we're like really good at feeling superior.
Oh, of
Like
course, yeah.
we do that so much in a lot of places. And I feel like in Argentina and Uruguay, the people are also like lighter skinned, are they not?
Yeah, so that yeah, that's one of the things that like shocked me when I came here. Like I had this idea in Oregon we have like quite a big like Mexican American population. And so in my head, like not even consciously, I thought that's like what all Latinos looked like. And so when I came here, it kind of like also really opened my mind to the fact that Latinos can be like any race. And for some reason I never thought about that. But yeah, there's like I think per capita there's like more white people in Uruguay than in the US.
Really?
Yeah, like the
Wow.
percentage
Okay.
is higher. It's like 96% of this country is like white people.
Right, because they also have that like historical direct line to Europe, right? Like Argentina
Yeah.
was like Italians, I want to say. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, Italian. And it's the same here. Like if I my Thomas, my now husband, who's the reason I moved here, his uncle, so his aunt's husband, his family is from Germany, and his mom was going to Argentina, but she got off at the wrong stop and just stayed here in Montevideo. And I think that's the story for a lot of immigrants that came around that time. Like they didn't call out what city you were in, you just got off when the boat stopped, and then some people ended up here, some people ended up in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, you're just like in the new world, wherever that
Yeah.
is. You just
Yeah, exactly.
here
Apparently
we
she like
are.
apparently like this woman didn't know she thought she was in Buenos Aires for like 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, she didn't know.
Yeah, it is interesting, like the diversity in South America of how people look and stuff. Like I always associated like diversity in the West, or not in the West, but in North America. I associated it with people from other countries.
Right.
If Canada is diverse, it means that we have people from other nations. But then when you go to Latin America, they can have diversity all within under the same banner of the same nationality. They're all Argentinian, they're all like Colombian, but they can be anything from like our complexion of skin all the way to like black, and they're all just from the same country, born and raised. And so that was kind of a new idea for me that I hadn't considered, based on my experiences in Canada.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think it's because like the ideas of like race were different in like Northern Europe versus Southern Europe. So I've heard that in the New World that the under the Spanish crown, their idea of um of race was completely different to how the Canada and the US were doing it. So the idea was to like breed out certain races. So they would like encourage white people to breed, like have kids with natives or with black people to like breed out the that race, which is like horrible in a way, but it created like so much variation in Latin America versus in the US where it was just like separate completely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, there's a lot more mixing of people. Like, it's a mix of indigenous, like in South America and Latin America, it seems like it's more a mix of indigenous people with Europeans. And then the people that exist there now are a combination of those. And that's why you have this kind of spectrum of different skin tones. Whereas in North America, we didn't mix as much. And so even
Right, yeah.
now, you can clearly see people that look like me, where I look like just a German guy, and then indigenous people that
Right,
just look
yeah.
very indigenous. And so there are like Métis people in Canada, which is like a combination of both, like biracial people, but not near to the same extent as you see in Latin America. And it's also kind of weird because I think in Canada that you can very easily see like the local people and the colonizers, like in how people look. It's like
Yeah.
very obvious. And in Latin America, those lines have become blurred, I think, where it's like,
Yeah.
who's who, where's everyone historically from, right?
Of course, yeah. I think I've even like in the US, people always talk about like they're Irish, but their like closest Irish relative is like 5 generations ago.
Yeah,
Versus here,
yeah.
like you don't really hear a lot of that. Like they just identify as their nationality, which I thought was interesting as well.
Yeah, I think that maybe like I don't know, being like a white person in North America is kind of boring. I think people just want to be more interesting. They're like,
I mean,
I'm
I
not.
think that is for sure it. Yeah,
I'm not just a basic white guy. I'm German. Come on.
of
Ten
course,
generations
yeah.
ago, I was German. Give me some
Yeah,
credit.
it's either they cling to that, like I'm German, or they cling to like some baseball team, like some football
Right.
team. Like I'm a Packers fan all the way.
Uh-huh. Different ways of identifying yourself, basically. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So your initial boyfriend, the reason that you moved there is now your husband. You guys have been together this entire time.
Yes, we have, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, nothing makes you want to like understand a culture more than having a partner from there, I feel like.
Of course, yeah.
And then it also gives you the unique opportunity to like learn about it and have an authentic experience because now you're not just coming in as a tourist, you're coming in as like somebody's significant other and you're going to see like what life is actually like.
Yeah, and it's really nice when you move for somebody or with somebody, because you get to, like if I was just here as a tourist, it's like a very hard, it's like a fact, it's very hard to like get into social groups in Uruguay because a lot of people are friends with the same people they went to like elementary school with, so they have like the same friend group from when they're 5 years old to the day that they die. So it's really hard to like break into those groups. And if I didn't have him, it would have been super hard, I feel like, to make friends that were from here. So I'm very thankful for that. And I think it was because of that that I was able to pick up Spanish really quickly and like really immerse myself in the culture.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have like an extrinsic motivation right away. Like you can see the actual benefit in your day-to-day life of learning the language and being able to communicate with his friends and stuff. I'm assuming he also speaks English.
Yes, yeah. He went to a bilingual school, so he started learning English when he was 3. And then when I met him, he spoke fluent English. He just had like a very thick accent, but we've worked on it. So to me, he sounds completely like from the US.
He's become like someone from Oregon now. He has the West
Yes,
Coast
yes.
accent.
Yes, he does.
I think that's funny too. Like when you have a partner from a different country and you're learning their language, there's like you just end up imitating them, because they're the person
Exactly.
that you spend the most time with, right? And so
Yeah.
I've had that experience before. Like the first foreign language that I learned was actually Tagalog, like Filipino.
Yeah,
And
I
so
saw.
I like learned that with a girlfriend that I had at the time, and we were together for a long time, like 4 years. And so lots of exposure. But sometimes, like especially earlier on, a couple years into learning it, people would tell me that I spoke Tagalog in a very kind of like feminine way, and I was like, oh, it's
Really? Wow.
interesting. I never really thought of it that way. And I guess I was just kind of imitating the way that my girlfriend was speaking, and so I used some expressions that are typically used
Hmm.
mostly by women instead of guys. Now, I mean, you could argue that you wouldn't need to have vernacular that's gendered, but either way, it like stood out a little bit because of how I look. And so, and then also with my girlfriend now, who's from Colombia, I imitate what she says. And so when I speak to Spanish speakers, they will say like, "Oh wow, like you sound very Colombian," and I was like, "Oh." No, wasn't necessarily trying to do that, but my girlfriend is from Colombia, so that's just how it happens, you know?
Isn't that the best
Uh,
compliment though when they tell you you sound like you're from like a specific country?
yeah, it's better than being like, "Oh, you sound like a gringo."
Exactly. Of course, yeah.
No one wants to hear that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm here and I speak Spanish, a lot of people like they know that I'm not from Montevideo, so they just think I'm from Buenos Aires. And it's the same when I'm in Buenos Aires, they think I'm from here.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Like they can tell that like something is different, but you don't sound foreign.
Yeah, so they just guess that I'm from the closest like major city.
Right. Yeah. I think my equivalent of that in Tagalog is that there's lots of different languages in the Philippines and they share some characteristics. And so sometimes people will just assume that if they can't see me, that is, like if it's on the phone, they'll assume that I am from another language group. Like, oh, you're a Bisaya speaking person that's speaking Tagalog. Or they'd say, are you Ilongo? And I know I'm Canadian. And so it's the same thing where it's like it sounds off, but it doesn't necessarily sound foreign. So it's like you're not a native speaker, but you might be a Filipino that speaks another language. So maybe the same case with you. It's like you don't sound like you're from Uruguay, but you might be from Argentina.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So like, how did you guys do that? Like early on in the relationship? Like, I'm assuming that when you first met, it was all English. Has that
Yeah.
changed over the years? You guys now speak both languages or Spanish?
We do, yeah. It depends where we are. So obviously when we're with his family, so we have like family Sunday lunches, and so when we're with his family, we only speak Spanish. And then when it's just us two, it's like a mix. So usually English, but sometimes we speak Spanish as well. Like if we don't want to be stared at, like on the bus, we'll just speak Spanish.
Right. Yeah. If you don't want to get ripped off in a taxi or something.
That as well, yeah. When we're at the flea market here, we really just stick to the Spanish.
When I was in Colombia, my sister came and visited us, and she doesn't speak any Spanish, and so we would like, take taxis together, the three of us. And my girlfriend was like, it'd probably be better if we didn't speak any English because I feel like they're gonna charge us like double the price. We should just like speak Spanish, or if you don't speak Spanish, just don't say anything.
Right, right. Just
Don't give it
whisper.
away. Just whisper really, really quietly. Yeah, you do get used to speaking a certain language with somebody, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to deviate from that after you have like a bunch of years of just speaking one language. It feels awkward to change almost, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, especially when we have like inside jokes and we have jokes that are only in English. Like it's just easy to say like one word in English and then all of a sudden we switch back from Spanish.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to have both because I feel like then you can understand the person more like kind of more in depthly. Like I
Hmm.
think that every language has the opportunity to kind of reveal a different part of your personality. And so the more languages that in common you have with your partner, the more you can understand, the kind of complexity of their personality, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like when I first came here for those like 2 weeks in 2019 and I saw him like speaking with his family and like the way he would make everybody laugh, I was like, "Oh, he's actually like really funny." Obviously, I thought he was funny in English, but he was like even more so in Spanish.
Right,
It
right.
took me a
Yeah.
while
Yeah,
to get the joke, but eventually I got it.
there's like that meme where it's like you don't know how smart I am in my native language. And
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
so true. Like I think that it's when you're especially if you're in an environment where you can't default to like a bilingual type situation. Like for example, my girlfriend's family, they don't speak any English. Like her sister speaks a little bit, but most of them don't speak any English at all. and that's kind of a common thing in Colombia in general, right? And so there was no defaulting to English. Like I just had to speak Spanish, and
Wow,
it
that's a
got
that's a big
tiring.
motivator.
It's a huge motivator, but it's also heavy because I got tired of like always being like the quote unquote dumbest person in the room, where like
Yeah.
I'm just not operating at the same speed that everybody else is, right?
Yeah. Or they just assume you're really quiet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're really introverted. You've said one word in the last 3 hours.
Yeah.
When did when did your Spanish learning journey begin?
So before I met him, I didn't know any Spanish at all. Like it wasn't even like something that I was on my radar to learn. The majority of people that I knew that spoke Spanish were like second or third generation, like Mexican Americans. And so in my head, it was like they speak Spanish, but I don't. And I just like had no desire to learn. And like the Spanish teacher at my middle school, like was notoriously awful. Like nobody learned anything. And so to me, it was like never even a thought in my mind. But then of course, that all changed when I met him. And he taught me. So when he came to visit me in December, that first time in 2018, he was trying to teach me a lot because I obviously wanted to learn and I wanted to talk to him in Spanish. And so he taught me the alphabet. He taught me to count to 100 and he taught me the vowel sounds. And looking back on it, the vowel sounds were like the most important thing I think he could teach me because it really helped me like pronounce words. And it really, because in English we have like 22 vowel sounds or something crazy like that. But in Spanish, there's just five. So after he taught me that, I could like read pretty much everything, which was really, really good, I think.
Yeah, I think having that strong foundation helps, right? Then where moving forward you won't make as many mistakes. It won't become like a habit.
Of course, yeah. And then after that, I took two classes at my university. Took Spanish 101 and Spanish 102, and then that gave me like a really good like foundation to start learning on my own because I learned like the sort of rules that exist within Spanish, like the says and the like how to use adjectives versus like descriptor words, like they're like flipped in
Hmm.
Spanish.
Yeah,
And
the
then
word
I
order.
learned, yeah, exactly. And then I learned like basic conjugation. Um, and then after that, I just learned while being here, like speaking to his family and speaking to him and speaking to people on the street. And I think that's what really helps is speaking to people.
Yeah, kind of like getting your reps in. There's like a boot camp phase where you just like grind out the grammar, and then there's an actual like practice phase where you can go and talk to people and put your new words to use,
Of
basically.
course, yeah. And I really tried not to be like nervous or scared. And I realized like I was nervous at first to like make mistakes, but then I realized people just thought it was cute.
Yeah,
And so they
yeah.
wanted to help, so it was nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of the judgment we feel is like self-inflicted judgment, where it's
Of
like, oh,
course,
why didn't I
yeah.
say that right? And I mean, like what I said about feeling like I was dumb, no one else said that to me, right? Obviously,
Right, yeah.
I was just thinking that in my own head. But yeah, people are very helpful, and I think Latinos are super nice with that too, like
It's the
not being
Latinos,
judgy.
yeah. Yeah, they're very nice there. At least here, like people really, really want to help you. And especially if you're learning, I found that if you're learning Spanish or like Arabic that have very specific dialects depending on where you are, it really helps to just or learn one specific one. So because I was only trying to learn Uruguayan Spanish, when I like barely knew anything, I was like A2 and I like used the sh or like the colloquial words. They loved it. So they wanted to help even more because they loved it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like patriotic for them where they're like, wow, you're like we feel seen, you're
Of
imitating our
course,
accent and
yeah.
our like slang and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
of
definitely had
course.
that in Colombia as well. I feel like there's also people that will try to troll you if you don't speak Spanish very well. And they like tell jokes that are like clearly not for you. They're at you, but they're for everyone else in the room.
Hmm.
Or they like tell you like super long, complicated words and be like, "Do you know that?" It's like, "No, I don't know that one."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been there too. Yeah.
it's always in like a fun way though. Like I feel like Latinos just like to joke around a lot,
Yeah,
and
they like to mess with you a little bit, don't they?
yeah, they're trolls. They're trolls. I think it comes from a place of love, but it's definitely trolling
Of
sometimes.
course, yeah, yeah.
So then, like, what do you think? Like, as an English speaker, what do you think the hardest part of learning Spanish is?
I think just, I think honestly, from other people that I know that have been trying to learn Spanish, it's just the rules that exist. Like, I know a lot of people feel like very limited by the rules because, like, in English, obviously. you don't see the rules that are there. They're just like subconsciously in your head, like you don't even think about it when you speak. And so they feel like really stuck within these rigid rules. But I think like the opposite, like the rules really help you so much because once you learn them, like you have them forever. And if you make any mistakes, like I think if you learn the basic rules of Spanish, um, like there are like of course exceptions to the rules, but they'll people will correct you on the exceptions and you never really forget a correction, especially if it happens in like a conversation at like a grocery store or a cafe. Like I literally remember every time I've ever been corrected for anything because it's just like it's sometimes it's like a knife to the heart when you think you're speaking so eloquently, so fluently, and then they just correct you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have like a forever a mental association of the mistake that you made because it's kind of like it's like vulnerable to speak another language.
Of course, yeah.
It's different than any other skill you can learn because it's so like all encompassing. Like a language isn't a thing; it's the thing that allows you to do everything else. And so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
feels like if you mess up, it's not just a mistake; it's like something personal. Like you're bad because you didn't know the subjunctive
Yeah, of
conjugation of
course.
that verb.
I
You
know.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it really is all encompassing, like you're saying. Like once you start to understand a little bit, you can start consuming so much media, and then you can learn like slang and memes and jokes and like colloquialisms. It's so fun. When I first started to like understand a little bit, I started like having friends from here send me like memes and send me like reality TV shows to watch. And so that was really nice. Like I was able to tell jokes and like say stuff about like local celebrities that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And every, like you said, every country is really unique in that way, especially Spanish speaking countries. Like as English speakers, yeah, it's like, okay, we have British English, American English, Australian English, but like realistically, there's just a handful of countries that are native English speakers. And I mean, you could argue that like in the UK, there's a lot more like concentration of different accents, but when it comes to Spanish, there's like over 20 different countries that have Spanish as an official language. And then within those countries, they also have different accents. And so just like there's way more combinations of difference and variation in language when it comes to Spanish. And as a learner, that can be a little bit intimidating. It's like, well, what version am I supposed to learn? It makes a lot of sense. You know, if you have a boyfriend from Uruguay, or I had, my girlfriend's from Colombia, of course, those are the languages, or those are the kind of dialects you could say that we're going to learn. But if you didn't have that immediate connection, it's like, well, where do you start? You could, because Spanish in Spain is like so different than it is in, the Dominican Republic, for
Yeah, of
example.
course.
Yeah, so there's lots of slang to learn. So like when you speak to other people from different countries in Latin America, do they think you're like from Uruguay or Argentina? Like if you're outside of those two countries, I mean,
Yeah, for some reason, like Uruguay never comes into people's heads, so everybody just thinks I'm from Argentina.
because of the sh.
Yes, yeah. So obviously there's the sh, but one thing that I didn't know before I came here was that in Uruguay and Argentina they use a different conjugation for Spanish. It's the você conjugation. So,
Oh,
um, yeah. So instead of saying tú here, they say vos.
right.
Yeah. So in
Okay.
in like other Spanish throughout Latin America, tú is like both your and you, but in Uruguay, tú is yours or your, and vos is you.
Interesting. And it has a different conjugation.
Yeah, so instead of saying like puedes, we say podes, and instead of saying like uh tienes, we say tenés.
Ah, I think that like when I was studying Spanish, because I took a couple classes in university, they would talk about vosotros, and I
Yes,
always
yeah.
thought that vos and vosotros are the same, but they're actually not, right?
Yeah, they're a different conjugation completely. Yeah.
Yeah, they just sound the same. Like vos, vosotros, you assume that it's the same, but
hmm
it's
I
it's different. That's
yeah.
interesting.
I think
Wow.
that's another thing of like Spanish wanting to like maintain sameness in rules. Like they just seem similar even though they are completely different.
And is that dedicated for formal interactions, or would you say vos with your friends as well?
Yeah, so Vos back in like the old days in Spain before I'm pretty sure it was before they discovered the New World. Um, Vos was like the highest form of speech. Like you would only use that to like kings or queens or people in the royal family. Um, but nowadays Vos is only it's the most like informal you could use.
Ah, okay,
hmm
okay. Yeah, so it's not formal at all anymore. That's interesting how
Mm-mm.
it would change so drastically,
Yeah, yeah, it's really
from the
interesting.
highest to the lowest.
I know, yeah.
I Something that was unusual for me is that like using usted, like in Spanish class, they talk about usted being for more formal interactions or with people that you might not know as well, like not necessarily with your friends. And then you would use tú, or I guess maybe vos, for people that you do know better. But in Colombia, they use usted for everybody. Like
Really?
pretty much the only exception is if you are with like a significant other. So you call
Oh,
like
really?
your spouse or like your partner, you would call them with, you would use tú with them, but everybody else, usted. Like
Wow.
siblings are saying usted between each other, with your parents, with your friends, anybody else. And so that was, I didn't realize that that was even a thing until I got to Colombia. And then I was like,
Neither
oh,
did
I should have
I.
studied those conjugations better.
Yeah, I feel like that would mess me up. That's so interesting. Because here in Uruguay, usted is never used. No, yeah, you would never use usted. I've never used it ever here.
Interesting. Yeah, because like it is, I guess usted is being the formal two does have the same conjugation as the third person, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So
So
it's
it
like saying
isn't
he
like
has.
he, yeah, and then just with the word usted, if you want to add that, you wouldn't necessarily need to, but it does get kind of confusing because it's hard to tell. Because in Spanish, you can get away with removing the pronouns
Mhm.
because every verb, basically conjugation, already tells you what subject is doing it.
Yeah.
However, the third person shares that. So he and she is shared. And then in
Hmm.
Colombia, because everybody uses usted, now you is also shared. So
That
when
can get
someone said,
confusing. Yeah.
like, if someone says, like, lo hace, it's like, they do it, or it could be he does it,
Hmm.
she does it, or you do it. It could
Hmm.
be any of
Wow.
those, and without context, you wouldn't know who's doing what.
That's so
Um,
interesting.
and I'm sometimes worried that I'm not formal enough when I talk to my girlfriend's family because 80% of the time, like we live in Canada, right? So like all of my Spanish exposure is just with her, and we obviously use tú, and so I speak that way and I think that way. And then when I speak with her family, I'm always like, puedes decir, puede decirme. Like I always have to change the conjugation to be more formal because I'm worried that I'm like not following the rules close enough. So it's
Interesting.
challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
it's
imagine
really
that that would be difficult, especially like as an English speaker, where it's like basically saying everything in the third person.
right.
It's
Yeah.
so that's so fascinating. Yeah, I had no idea that they did that there because, like I said here, I've never used it. I've heard like I was talking with my mother-in-law, and like some people, like if you like some foreigners will say like usted to like an older woman, and they get offended. They're like, "Oh, you think I'm some
Ah.
sort of granny? Like what? You think I'm just I look old to you?" Like they take it as like
Right.
an offense. Like you think that I'm old.
It's like that in Colombia if you say the word señora. They really don't
Oh,
like that, right? Because then that's like
yeah.
ma'am, as opposed to like
Yeah.
señorita, I guess. It's like ma'am. And but the usted is just like commonplace. Even with kids, people say usted.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Now, in Uruguay, it also has some interesting linguistical functions. Like in the Spanish, there's the aspirated S. Is that
Yeah,
an accurate
mosca.
description?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, mosca instead of mosca.
Mocha,
Like
mocha.
the S is
Okay.
like very slight. Like my name is like Tristan instead of
Uh,
Tristan, mosca.
it's like almost between like standard Spanish, the standard Spanish like s, and like the Spain th.
That's
It's like almost
yeah.
in between those two, I feel like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I feel like because in my experience speaking to Latin Americans whose first language is Spanish and English, a lot like Uruguayans and Argentinians specifically have a very distinct accent when they speak English that's very different from other Latin American countries, which was
Mm,
really fascinating to me. Like it's they all have like the same accent when they speak English.
okay. Because of their version of Spanish.
Yeah, I think so. Like I don't know if it makes their like mouth, their tongue like more flexible, but they have like a very interesting accent that's different than like because I grew up near like Mexican Americans and they all have like a very when they speak English, of course, they have like a most Mexican Americans or like Mexicans that moved to the US have like a thick accent, but Uruguayans and Argentinians don't really when they speak English. It just sounds like they're vaguely European.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like some carryover, I think, between Italian and the Spanish that is spoken in that region. Do you think that that's why it has that kind of European flair to it?
Maybe, yeah, that could be it. Maybe they just all go to like amazing schools as well, where they just learn how to speak very good.
Yes, yeah. Is that true that like in Uruguay it's like more developed maybe than the rest of Latin America?
Um, I mean, comparing like here, I've only been to major cities in Latin America, so compared to like other major cities, I would say Uruguay maybe is like a little bit more like pedestrian friendly. Like there's a lot more pedestrian infrastructure that exists here. Um, we have the Rambla, which is like a sidewalk that goes all the way across it's a sidewalk that runs completely throughout the city, and it's all along the beach here, and it's the longest continuous sidewalk in the whole world. It's like 14 kilometers long.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so that's really nice. And there's a few pedestrian only streets, and like pretty much every street has sidewalks, which being from the US is like mind blowing to me. But yeah, I think the compared to like other large cities, it maybe is a little bit more developed. But I think if you were to ask Uruguayans if they thought that they were more like bougie than other countries, they would absolutely say no. But
Mm.
I feel like there is a little some truth to that, yes.
Like, I mean, you don't have to be a bougie person for your country to be like more prosperous economically.
Right. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, very. It's like they say it's the Switzerland of South America. Like it maintains neutrality in like both world wars, they were neutral. And they also have been able to maintain like economic stability, even though neighboring countries like Argentina and Brazil have had issues recently.
Yeah, and I think that like sometimes we don't always recognize how we benefit from the developments or economy of our country as well. Like you
Hmm.
as Canadians, if we're bougie, no one will say yes.
Yeah.
But in comparison to like the majority of the world, we have so many privileges that we
Of
don't even
course,
see, right?
yeah, of course, yeah. And I think that it's the same here. Like a lot of people would say that they like live in the third world here, but of course, if you compare it to like other neighboring countries, it's a lot more developed.
I would imagine that like coming from Oregon and moving to Uruguay, your day-to-day life is probably drastically different. Like what are some of the biggest
Yeah,
differences between living in the US versus there in
it's
Uruguay?
very different. Well, in the US, I lived in like a suburb in Salem. It's very much like we have one small downtown and then suburbs, and everything is very spread out. Everything's very far from each other, and we don't have a lot of mixed use zonings. So like where I grew up, there was only houses allowed to be built, and I lived like a 7 minute drive from a grocery store, but to walk was like an hour and 10 minutes. It's crazy because like all the twists and turns and the up hills and stuff. So I lived like nowhere near any businesses. I never have lived near any like commercial area. Our downtown was the one place where there was like a couple apartments like in proximity to like businesses. And so living here now, I'm looking at a grocery store right now. There's like a grocery store, a bakery, a bank, like all right there. There's a pharmacy on the corner. And so I'm very close to a lot of things, which is so nice. And it's like that here for pretty much the majority of people. We have like there's obviously a downtown here, but each neighborhood has its own like little downtown, which is really nice. Like there's a main street that has like a bakery, a pharmacy, a grocery store, like a little kiosk where you can like charge your phone, like saldo, like your balance. And so I would say like most people are like a 10 or 15-minute walk away from like all their basic things that you would need. So that's really nice. So I don't drive here. I like take the bus because they have a really good like public transit system here. Their buses are like tracked on the app too. Like you can see if your bus is going to be late. You can like see where it's at, if
Whoa.
it's going fast or slow, which is really cool. Um, and so yeah, I walk a lot, which is really nice. I get like 15,000 steps a day, like easily just like living my day-to-day life. What in the US I was getting like maybe two or three, like not even joking.
We're not set up for that really in North America. Like we're
No,
not set up to
yeah.
walk.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Hmm.
And I think it's because like people were incentivized to move and there was like nothing there. So they just like spread out really far. Whereas here, like there was an old city and slowly they moved out of the old city. And so there was like thought put into where the city would go. And so they put that thought into people. I feel like, which is really
Hmm.
nice. Like I
Accessibility.
Of course, yeah. The further east you get in Montevideo, the like more developed the neighborhood is, which is really nice. So the furthest east neighborhood is called Carrasco, and it's like right on the border of the city. And that neighborhood is like it's wonderful. It's beautiful. They have really good infrastructure for cars and for pedestrians, which is really cool. And it's like almost completely like mixed use, which is very, very nice. There's like houses next to like there's a house, a Starbucks, a bank, an apartment building, another house. It's so nice.
And it makes total sense. It's like, what do people need to live a happy life? They need food. They need access to
Right.
like their money. It's like that totally makes sense that you would want to live close to those places. But, in North America, we just seem to have a really big divide between residential areas and like commercial areas, all with the assumption that you're going to have a car to drive every single day back
Yeah.
and forth between those two regions, right?
Yeah, it really holds you back, especially as like a kid. Like when I was growing up, I it was so hard to like do anything when I was young. Like I couldn't go anywhere. If I wanted to walk anywhere, it was like my mom wouldn't let me because it was like so dangerous because there was no sidewalks. Even if I was like 20 minutes from something, I couldn't go because like there was no sidewalk.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you're not of driving age, or maybe if you're a senior and you
Hmm.
can't drive anymore, you're going to be in trouble. You can't get around very easily. And we also, all of that is in that, it's all combined with a lack of really good public transit. And so, like, okay, it's fine. You live far from the downtown area. Let's have a train line. And we're just like, nope,
Oh
not going
yeah.
to do that for some
Right,
reason.
right. And it's so interesting that it's not done. Like being from Oregon, like it's a blue state, which means like it's a more left state. But even within Oregon, within a state that's left, there was so much pushback against like developing more public infrastructure, like buses and things like that, because there was no money for it. Versus coming here, and obviously the population's a lot smaller, the economy is smaller, but they really like put money into that because it's for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, if you can take public transit, then it helps everyone of every age group, right? It just
Of
helps you
course, yeah.
become more connected to other parts of the city. It's
Yeah.
what I like about living here in Vancouver is that it's like one of the best cities in Canada for public transit. Like where I come from in Calgary, we don't have train. There is one train line that has limited accessibility and some buses, but other than that, you're driving, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's crazy that we don't like put more money or funding toward people, I read a statistic one time that said like the number one factor for if you like come from like an area of poverty is like your access to public transit. It's like the number one factor.
Yeah, honestly, I believe it.
Yeah, and it makes sense, like if you can't afford like a new car to make payments on a car and you get like a used car, like what are the odds of it breaking down? And then if it breaks down, like you have to put money into it because that's your like one thing that you can use to get anywhere. Versus like if you didn't need to like funnel all your money into this car that always breaks down, then you could save it and just take public transit.
Thank you so much for doing this, Tristan. This was a really cool conversation. You have a very interesting story, and I appreciate you sharing it with me. I love your content. I love your videos on your YouTube channel. Tell people how they can find you online if they want to watch your videos.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. Really nice to meet you as well. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube, just Tristan Martin.
Perfect. Yeah, and you have Instagram as well. Do you post content on there?
I do, yeah. I'm posting more. I have some more shorts coming up, like short and condensed versions of the longer videos I make on YouTube on my Instagram, which is Tristan.Martin underscore.
Awesome. Okay, sweet. Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.